Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, featuring the sharpest minds in marketing, inspirational case histories, and weekly insights you can apply to your business. Find out why top CMOs rank this podcast among their favorites. Now, here's your host, Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
Hello, Renegade Thinkers. Over the last 174 episodes, the notion of purpose as it relates to brand building has come up innumerable times. But amazingly, we've never dedicated an entire episode to that topic. Well, that changes now with episode 175, featuring a very special guest and a live audience of CMOs who will join the conversation in the latter part of the show. In this episode, we will explore what purpose is and isn't, how you find yours, aligning a brand purpose with individual purpose, and some real-world examples of the power of purpose. Now, speaking of doing things on purpose, my guest today, Dov Baron, is a genuine renegade thinker. He is the founder of Full Monty Leadership and a best-selling author. He is recognized by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. He is the host of the Roku TV show Pursuing Deep Greatness with Dov Baron, and the host of the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 listeners globally, Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show. Now, on Dov's podcast, which I had the pleasure of joining last fall, he welcomes his guests with a huge and uplifting round of applause. So I'd like the audience at this moment to give a great Renegade Thinkers Unite welcome to Dov Baron. Yeah, it's not quite as good as yours, Dov, but how do we do? Welcome to the show.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
So, all right. Dov, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so before we get too deep into this topic, let's start broadly. And the word purpose is thrown around a lot in marketing and in consulting circles. When you use the word purpose, what do you mean?
Yeah, you and I have had discussions about this before, that I think that, you know, I like the fact that everybody's talking about purpose, but I think that oftentimes we don't look at it in the depth that we need to understand. So for me, when I talk about purpose, I'm talking about a psychological primary driver in a human being, and collectively, the psychological primary drivers of an executive team that I work with when I'm working with a company, to find a collective that is going to drive that organization. And what that means is it is deeply emotionally connected and it is deeply meaningful, as opposed to some mission statement with a lick of paint that's dressed up to look like purpose.
Careful now.
No, I'm not saying you. Not at all. I'm just saying that oftentimes, and you know this, Drew.
Yeah.
You have people come to you and say, oh, we found our purpose. And what you're actually, you know, you listen to them and you go, oh, well, it's really a mission statement you've just retitled.
Right. And so help me, what's the difference between a mission statement and a purpose?
Yeah. So a mission statement is, this is our mission. This is what we want to do. Okay, great. Our vision is, this is where we want to be at a certain point in time, and how it will look, right? So this is when we get there. Okay. But our purpose is, what is the fuel that drives us? So one of the distinctions that I help people to understand is this. When I say to somebody, do you know the difference between purpose and passion? And most people don't. They think it's pretty much the same thing. It's not. Passion is transitory.
Okay.
And if you are entrepreneurial, then you can often feel like, I'm a bit flaky because I'm always jumping from place to place. My passions change. Your passions are supposed to change. They're a vehicle. They transport your purpose. They are not your purpose. So passion is what transports the purpose. The purpose is a deep psychological driver. It's not the passion. They're vastly different.
Okay. I get that. There's lots of things I'm personally passionate about. And I know Stephen Handmaker, who's one of the guests, is passionate about Bruce Springsteen, but I don't think he would necessarily say that is his purpose in life, other than to see him in as many times as he can. So
I read that he was an impersonator, that he does Bruce Springsteen impersonations. He's got his own show.
Keeping that between us.
Yeah, right. Shh. Okay, now one of the things that I think is really interesting is when I hear you talk, so much about purpose is a very individualized notion.
Yes.
And that's where you start. So can you help us understand how you get to help these executives get to an individual purpose? And then from there, we can move forward to how do we get this into a corporate purpose?
Right. So that's a great question. So at an individual level, there's a whole, obviously a whole methodology to this, and we go in and we work with companies and help them to do it. And it takes a full day of just boiling it down. We do 2 days, one day where everybody works on their own, and the second day where we bring it all together and work on it as a corporate. But just to start everybody off in a way for you to make this real for yourself is, I want to ask you a couple of questions. And is that okay with everybody that you play along with me? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, good. So what I'm going to ask you to do for a minute is I just want you to think about something that has pissed you off for as long as you can remember. Not something that bothers you this week in politics or this week in the news, but something that has bugged you for as long as you can remember. And it's kind of a thing that you think, why hasn't somebody fixed that yet? Why isn't that sorted out? And so what you've got there is what's called a long-term. So it's not acute. It's a chronic, long-term, and low-grade pain. Meaning it's low-grade, meaning you're still running on with your life, but it's always sort of back there in the, like, if that comes up at a conversation at a dinner party, you'll be in on that. You're going to add some of that. So that's the first thing. What is the long-term chronic sort of irritant? That's the first thing that I would ask you to look at. Okay, what's bugged you for as long as you can remember? The next thing I would ask you is this. When you think about your life and you think about where you want to go, what I would ask you to just stop for a minute and ask yourself this question. Number one, what is the question I don't want to ask? What is the question I don't ask myself? I don't allow myself to ask. Now, the truth is you do ask it, but it's only very quietly in your own head and you don't bring it forward. So it's this undercurrent stuff, right? It's below the surface, right? And it's usually not positive. And you don't have to worry about that. It's usually not positive, and oftentimes it has a lot of, there's traits of imposter syndrome in there usually. Not for you guys, but for all of us. It's part of what shows up, right? So it's like, well, am I really, is this really whatever it is, right? So that's another piece of it. Then we look at, okay, so we've got those things in place. Now we say, all right, and this is fundamental. Have you been to a funeral? Has everybody been to a funeral? Right.
I'm sure there, yeah.
Yeah. So many years ago, a very good friend of mine who I'd known for a long time asked me to go to his dad's funeral. Now, I should tell you that I said no, and the reason I said no is because I had met his dad on many occasions. And that was a good reason not to go. Because my friend, who at that time was, I think, 30, had regaled to me what his childhood was like, and it was not pretty. His father had been cruel and mean, and so he asked me to go to the funeral, and I said, why would I go? No. And he said, would you go just to support me? And I said, yeah, as long as we don't sit at the front. And he goes, yeah, that's fine. So we went to the funeral. Now, if you've been to a funeral, you know that the person delivering the eulogy has one job and one job only, and that is to dry clean the person who's dead. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Right? We're not saying crappy things about this person. We're only going to say the very best about this person. So you dry clean. So the guy at the front said about my friend's dad, he said, he was such a generous man. And he regaled a story of how many, many years ago he had paid the rent of a neighbor and never asked for the money back. Very nice story. Not aligned with who he really was, but it was a single clip, single moment that is this perfect moment. So now what I would ask you to do is with yourself, is to think about, okay, if they were dry cleaning me at my eulogy, what do I want them to say? So for instance, I'll be completely transparent with you. I'll tell you mine, and that way you'll see how this works. So mine says, Dov was a highly courageous man who lived his life on purpose, who helped others to find their dragon fire so they could become dragons in the world by living on purpose and creating an impact that lasts longer than they do, touching the lives of those who do not know their name. That's mine. Right.
Okay.
That's mine. That's a fabulous eulogy. I want them to say that. It's hard to live to every day, don't get me wrong, but it's there. Okay?
Well, and the dragon is such a great thing and timely with Game of Thrones. And I want to take a quick break because I want to ponder this for a second, and then when we come back, we'll explore this a little bit more. Okay, so stay with us. Hey, it's Drew, and I wanted to have a quick conversation about turning lemons into lemonade. Here are the lemons: skiing, Park City, January 11th, third day, last run, going fast. Light was bad, a lot of snow on the ground, 50 yards from the bottom, I crashed and burned. Literally tumbling down the mountain, did a 3-point landing with my head and 2 thumbs. Broke the right thumb, sprained the left thumb, finished up surgery 5 days later, and now I have a little extra time on my hands. What do? I finish a special report that I've been dying to finish for a long time, which is a way for me to get to my next book. It's a preview of the book. You can find it on renegade.com. On the very beginning of the homepage at the top, there's a banner that says B2B Special Report. I would love it if you took a look at this and let me know what you thought. I think you're going to find a lot of value in it. Okay, we're back. And Dov just shared his purpose. And I thought it would be interesting in given that purpose and given that sort of tombstone, write your own tombstone now, which I love that notion. Perhaps you could share, Dov, while you're exposing, how you got there, because I know there's a dramatic story that happened.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe you could talk about that moment and were you writing it as you were falling, or during the recovery process?
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, in June 1990, I fell 120 feet, approximately 12 stories off a mountain while free climbing. I was an adrenaline junkie back in those days and got smashed to pieces. And everybody asked, oh, that must have been the moment that changed your life. It wasn't. It was changed my life physically, for sure, but it didn't change my life in other ways. I was smashed to pieces. I've had more than 10 reconstructive surgeries. It was a big old mess. But when people would ask me, how you doing? I had been a boxer. I'd been a martial artist. I was born in a ghetto. I'm tough and I'm a leader. And I've been a leader all my life. So when people ask me how you doing, my answer in my very macho way would be, I'm great. I'm coming back. Well, I got news for you. That's not how life works. There is no back. Right. So, I was not coming back. And it was about 9 months after that fall, and like I said, many reconstructive surgeries, and I was really feeling like I was never going to come back. And about 9 months in, I fell into this very deep, dark depression and found myself on my living room floor weeping and realizing that I was suicidal, and all this I'm coming back was nonsense, and I knew that. And I, in that moment, realized I had one of 3 paths: to keep trying to come back, which clearly wasn't working, to stay where I was feeling like a victim of circumstance, and I was never gonna, I could say, the Marlon Brando line, it could have been a contender, but, shit happens, and my life went down the toilet. And I could remain in that place of victim, which, by the way, was a very seductive idea. That was the most seductive one. And then there was the third option, and the third option was I have to find out why I'm here. I have to find out what is the purpose of my life beyond every success. Now, at that moment, before I fell, you should know I was at the top of my game. I was the most successful I'd ever been in my life. I was on TV, radio, newspapers across Australia, Canada, the US. I was doing super well. but I realized it was without meaning. It didn't have the meaning like I craved that on a regular basis. And so that was the moment of going, okay, I have to do that. And that was where, what I call is where I had to turn into the dragon's fire. I had to go and be willing to face this thing that would be painful to look at. I had to be willing to answer those questions that I asked you earlier on, which is, you know, what has bugged me for as long as I can remember? That was one of the questions that came up. What is the question I don't want to ask myself? What are the questions I'm just don't want to answer? And by looking at those, and then that moved in, and of course, that became a development of the process. And, you know, as we were saying, the first part of that process is, what is the eulogy, the dry cleaned version of you? Now let's take us back to that scene. Is it okay if we go back to that scene? Is that all right, Drew?
Well, you know what I'm thinking, because we're in front of a bunch of marketers who were responsible for helping their organizations find their purpose and express their purpose. And while I get that I have to get there internally, help me sort of make the leap, and that the folks from my individual purpose, you know, to how do we get to the corporate purpose? And I'm going to share a story. I was with a group of CMOs at a CMO Club Awards banquet a few months ago. And I asked all the folks in the room, because I was leading the conversation, to sort of say, you know, tell us about your company in 8 words or less. And we went around the room and everybody basically said what they did. And then one woman said, the only one said, we, you know, we're making lives better through healthcare and enlightenment or something. I can't remember the exact words. And I called her out on that. And I said, you're the only one who described your company that way. And she said, that has been the most transformative thing that's happened to our organization. We now hire, fire, evaluate based on that purpose. And it really helps because individuals can find a way to align with that purpose. And if they're not aligned with the purpose, they're probably at the wrong company. They won't be happy. So that's this bridge, this big leap that we're talking about. And I'm wondering how you navigate that leap from individual purpose and the individual pains to sort of corporate purpose.
Absolutely. So as I said, what we do is we do that work initially with all the individuals, then we put it collectively together on that second day. And one of the questions is, what do all these individual purposes have in common? And there is always something.
Interesting.
So as you and I were talking about before, when we had a previous conversation, one of the companies we were working with recently was a health technology company. Right, all of the executive team, there were 6 of the executive team, all had their own unique individual purposes. But when we put it together, we found, oh, this is what it is. And then we came up with what this company's unique purpose was. Then we went, okay, so now let me ask you this question. I just asked this question. I said, if you went out there and said to everybody who works here, and I think it was like, I can't remember how many there was, but so if you went out to everybody in this building and said that work for you and said, this is our purpose, what would happen? And they said, I don't know. And I said, well, what do you think would be the responses? And they said, I said, do you think some people would go, whatever? And they said, yeah, good. Do you think some people would be very excited? Yes. Do you think anybody would be neutral? No. That's how you know its purpose. It doesn't have neutrality. It has to have an emotional pull. And so in the work, like you just said, Drew, we're always looking at you hire, you fire on that. Because here's the thing, what we know, in the war on talent, talent won. There's more, they get the power, they get the choice, not us. And they want meaningful work. We look and we say, oh, you know, millennials, those kids, whatever. Hey, hold on a second. Millennials this year are 40 years old. The top end millennials, they're not kids, they're in leadership positions. If you're 40 this year, you're a millennial, right? So they're not kids. And the number one thing on their list is meaningful work. What does meaningful work? It means I want to align with the purpose of this organization. Now, here's what's fascinating about it for you guys, as you in the CMO world, is your buyer wants an alignment of purpose as well. You know this. They want to feel like there's a meaning, a connection that's beyond the product. So that purpose piece has to come front and center in everything that's going on, so that I feel like I'm not just buying from this great company because they create a great product or because it's the right price, but because there's an alignment. There's an alignment with the meaning. And I know personally friends who do spend more because of an alignment with a brand's meaning, purpose, than they do with another brand that is pretty much identical. Pretty much identical. And I work oftentimes with companies who are in the, what I call commoditized business, meaning that they're in the financial services business. You know, I mean, geez, you know, millions of them, they're all doing the same thing. So what's the difference? It has to be purpose.
And of course, you're preaching to the choir with me.
Really?
Yeah, just a little bit. And I know that many of the listeners and the CMOs who have joined us believe this in their hearts. I think there is some sense, though, like the word brand,
yes,
that purpose is a fluffy idea.
Absolutely.
That it is this. You talk about purpose, I need to drive revenue. You talk about purpose, I need people coming to the website to buy our product. We're dealing with B2B, long sales cycles, and
Yep.
all these other challenges. Talk about maybe first, and this is, I think, so important, in your experience of maybe working with a different company where this purpose was communicated and the impact that it had employees, customers, prospects, and how that actually manifested into revenue?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's the thing that makes sense. So I'll pick a couple of them in sort of 10,000 foot views, and then we can go into any way you want with them. So consulting firm, the founder of that company came to me to do the work. We worked privately, and then we started working with his company and his organization. That company over the last 12 years has grown 5,000%. Not 50, but 5,000%. It's insane. They've become a global organization, and they are actually, the founder is flying in to be with me this afternoon with a bunch of other leaders that I work with. It's grown enormously for him, and now so they're global, and they've got coaches and people working with them across the world. Another company we were working with, again, health technology company. They used, and I've actually got this somewhere. I'm trying to find it actually right now because my marketing team have asked for it. They used what we had given them and done the work with them around purpose. And they went away and were able to raise $100 million for next tier of development. So that was pretty decent. And they said, couldn't have been done without purpose. Couldn't have been done without it. Everybody was aligned, not only with the executive team, but everybody in that financing room was so $100 million. That's another example. A financial advisory company in my city. When we started working with them, they were pretty small. They've 3x'd their employees, and they've changed completely. They pivoted completely about who their target audience is. They only speak up. The first meeting is nothing other than purpose. They speak the entire meeting about purpose, and they refuse to work with people who are not aligned with that purpose. All their hiring processes now for executive level individuals goes through me because it's around purpose. If it's not aligned on purpose, no matter what the skill level is, so they pay me to do that final piece with them to make sure it's aligned with purpose. And as a result, there's way better communication, way better conflict resolution, because we deal with all those things as well. So those are sort of some tangible, practical results of real purpose, because you're right. A lot of people look at purpose as being this fluffy stuff that nobody cares about. And the truth of the matter is that that's what it actually is. It's fluffy nonsense that nobody cares about until you understand what it is, until you actually do the real work.
Okay. Again, I'm a believer. And before we wrap up this segment and open the floor for questions, when we talked, we Simon Sinek has really sort of popularized this notion with his book Start With Why. And I loved you had a line about that one of the reasons that purpose exercises might not succeed is because they end with why and not start with why. Talk a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I'll go into a company and they'll say, oh, we've already done, we read Simon's work, and I go, great. I love Simon's work. It's a fabulous book. I encourage people to read it. But I say, what's the title of the book? And they go, Start With Why. And I go, right, start with, but you're not finished. They go, well, what do you mean? What's the why of your why? I don't know. Because again, most people have got to this why, and it's really a mission statement with a lick of paint. So what's the why of your why? If it wasn't about the money, what's it about? What's the meaning for you? And so here's the hard question. And this is what they pay me the big bucks for because of my background in psychology, which is, what does this heal in you? And they go, what do you mean? Well, I know this is probably not where you want to go, but I'm going to ask you privately, what does this heal in you? If this is your purpose, what part of you does it make whole that never felt whole? Because my work is about bringing home the disenfranchised parts of yourself, because the disenfranchised parts of yourself, you disenfranchise them to become as successful as you are. Kevin, Stephen, and I'm sorry, but I can't see your first name, Drew, all of us, right? We've all become incredibly successful at what we do. We're very good at what we do, and that's wonderful. And I applaud you. And part of that was through the discipline and the dedication and the commitment to move certain things to the side and go headlong and focus in on something. That's great. Wonderful. But some of the things you disenfranchised, you now need to bring back in order to move into purpose. They got you to success, but they don't get you to fulfillment. And fulfillment comes through purpose. So that's, again, asking those questions that we don't really want to ask. When we go to that, then we go, now what's the why of your why? How does this make me whole? That I'm not just hitting another goal, but I'm reaching a level of fulfillment. Because the journey is, I just want to give everybody this little analogy so you understand. If you are all successful, you know that. And so there's a good chance that people look at you and want to be who you are, or some people. Now, when you look at that, you go, okay, well, I have a level of success, whatever that is, over here in this bucket. And you think, well, where did the idea of success come from? And it probably came from people around you who said they want you to be successful, and they probably wanted you to be more successful than them. And if you ask why, well, because they wanted you to not suffer, they wanted you to have more comfort. Great, okay, so you got more successful and you've got more comfort than, let's say, your mom and dad, just to use that as an analogy. So you've got more success and more comfort. And then you get over it and you go, well, okay, I've got more success, I've got more comfort, I bought a bigger house, better car, maybe I bought a yacht, whatever it is for that person. Okay, great. Now I say, okay, so how meaningful is this? Well, it's kind of not. So obviously what I need to do is get more success. Then I can upgrade my comfort and it'll have more meaning. And that cycle keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. And of course it doesn't work because truth is not found in comfort. Did you get that? That's really important. Truth is not found in comfort. So what happens when this cycle wears out and we get tired, we get to this place where it's no meaning. Bottom end of the triangle is no meaning. Now we're brought to something called pain, emotional pain. Fabulous thing. Celebrate pain. It's the dragon fire. It's what burns away the illusion so that you can get to the truth. So you get to that pain. Pain plus curiosity leads to truth. So now we're in the bottom. Now we've got the triangle at the other end. We've got truth, which gives us meaning. And from meaning, we get fulfillment. And the three of those cycles together are purpose. That's the driving force. That's the why of your why that's much deeper, that gets you out of bed in the morning when you feel like crap and go, you know what? I got to go because this really matters.
Wow. Okay. I am so glad that this particular show, I have extra folks to ask some questions because I need to process all this while you just did it, and I want to write it down. And I can't write it down. For those of you listening, I broke my thumb skiing and I just had an operation and I'm trying to take notes and I can't. So I can't process all this. So we're going to take a quick break.
So he's going to come to you guys and ask for your notes.
Exactly. Fortunately, we're recording this so I can go back to it, but we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, CMOs, please be ready with your questions. I'm back. I'm not going to talk about skiing, but I do want to talk about the special report that you will find on renegade.com. There is so much meat in this, in the 12 steps to a more effective B2B brand strategy in 2020, that there are probably some folks out there that think I'm crazy to put that out there in front of a firewall. But I'm really hoping to get feedback from some of you all on the report, perhaps what's missing, because again, the book is going to be developed against this outline, but fleshing it out. There might be some guests that could help fill in some of the areas. You may disagree with some of the things. I'm really interested in your opinion on this piece, and your engagement with it will really help make the book that much stronger. So you'll find it on renegade.com. Very top, there's a banner that says 12 steps to a more effective B2B brand strategy. Take a look. Okay, we're back. All right, raise your hand if you have a question for Dov, because I need your help in what this means to you as an individual and how you know, what you're thinking about while he's sharing some of these ideas. Who's up?
This is Kevin.
Oh, hey, Kevin.
Hi. Yeah, hi, Kevin Fleece here, Chief Marketing Officer at Cofense. We're a cybersecurity software company. I'm totally bought in on the purpose, concept, and finding meaning. As a brand marketer, oftentimes it starts at find your brand, and I think we've done a good job of defining our purpose. What I'd love to understand is talk to me about how do you mobilize your team? How do you bring that purpose to an organization, that consulting company or that healthcare startup? Starting with the leadership team, tell me about how you were able to actually activate that within the organization and drive that change management.
Great question. So the first thing we do is when we go out to deliver the purpose, they do little focus groups. I'm trying to think of the word there. Focus groups inside the organization. And the focus group is one purpose only, and that is, here's the purpose. Now each one of us is going to say what you think that means. And this is really important because all meaning is subjective. You know that. The greatest challenge of being a brand manager, of being a marketing guy, is to try and get a cohesive meaning around something that is subjective, right? So, you know, it will bring you pleasure. What does that mean, right? So the first thing we do is we look at, okay, what is the collective meaning inside of each of the focus groups? And then we find out from there, well, do we need to restate this in a way that brings it home to everybody? That is part of what happens. But it's honestly, it sounds kind of weird, but what's miraculous about it is how, because of that boiling down process, because we do it so intently in that initial stage, it's fascinating that most people will get to very close to what it is we got to, the collective meaning of the statement. They'll get to it. But then here's the tie-in, and this is to answer your question, Kevin. So we say, how is our question? So this is the meaning, this is the purpose rather, this is the collective meaning. How does this tie to your purpose? Now, remember, we're asking now the person who's a manager, who's not gone through the exercise, who may not even know their purpose. And who's, how do you think this ties to your purpose? Every single time, the person looks psychologically to hook their purpose into it, even if they don't know what it is. Because number one thing people want is meaning. They want meaning in their life, and they'll attach to meaning if they don't have their own. So that's how you get the buy-in. Now, some people will say, I totally disagree with that. Great. here's a check, off you go, see you later, find another job.
That's the Zappos approach too.
Totally, and I love Tony Hsieh's approach on that.
So
does that answer your question, Kevin?
I'm going to summarize because I think this is interesting. So it feels like this has to trickle down on a one. So you get the executive team on board, then you have to work your way down. But I think a lot of companies, because they've got 400 people, they've got 700 people, whatever, struggle with this notion. How am I going to, do I have to physically, do I have to do a focus group, if you will, with every single employee? And if so, then I guess I have to trickle that down so that and train the trainers to get all the way, bring this to on a personalized level. Is that just essentially what we're talking about here?
Well, kind of. So one of the things that we do, and I talked about it in my last book, which was called Fiercely Loyal. And one of the things that we talk about is having what we call cultural concierge. So somebody who takes care of the culture. The person taking care of the culture is actually the person taking care of the purpose, right? So they're the ones who set up these groups. So we've done it in very large organizations in 2 days. And it's not 2 days is dedicated to this. In 2 days, everybody was able to do a focus group because you only need 15 minutes. Everybody can get a group of 3 or 4 or 5 people together, say, we've got 15 minutes. All I want you to do is to tell me what you think this means to you. This is our new purpose. It's not a big discussion. We just want one question. What does this mean to you? They write that down. They say what it is. Each person stands up and says what it is. And then the second question is, and this is the only second question, which is how does this tie to your purpose? That's it.
Purpose. Right.
And everybody leaves way more enthusiastic and connected.
Right. There's a bigger mission here. We're all going here.
So it's not hard to do.
Right. It's interesting. I love cultural concierge. I'm wondering if the folks in the audience are thinking about this and saying, okay, is this a new hire for me? Is this me partnering with HR? And so I'm curious. Okay, but let's next question. Dave, Stephen, yes.
And how does this? So thank you for this. It was a very invigorating discussion, and you're talking to the right people. So this is. I'm wondering, how do you look at this from taking that next step so that the clients feel it now that you have such internal buy-in? In what successful situations have you seen it then extend its way out so that it gets in that client sphere?
Yes.
Like, how do you break through the walls?
Well, so I have to ask you first to make sure I'm clear. Are we talking about in a marketing advertising way, or are we talking about it in a conversational eyeball to eyeball, sale to sale?
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at it from both standpoints. Is it how do you operationalize it so that it is part of your extended brand, and what do people do with it now when they're dealing with people externally? Do they start having that discussion as well and sharing it? Absolutely. I would imagine that could be a big win.
That's exactly it. We say, please have exactly the same discussion with everybody that you interact with. So one of the companies we were working with, they have a sales team, and they said, well, how does this work with us for sales? And I said, are you enthusiastic about the new purpose? Yes. Fabulous. I don't want you to go sell in your next sales meeting. And they go, what do you mean? I want you to go in and talk about purpose, but you only have 2 questions. Do you know what they are? No. What does this mean to you? And how does it tie to your purpose? And you've got to buy in again. So that is what it is. We've had people who've used it in their marketing and in their advertising. I will tell you one little thing that I didn't get a chance to mention. I just want to throw it in here because I want you to understand it. Because we do a lot of work with CMOs and marketing people and all the rest of it. And what we say is one of the things, because they're usually one of the executives in the team, in the meeting, we say, here's the thing to understand. When we do that first day, we say we're going to get to something, and the thing we're going to get to is likely going to be what we call the internal purpose statement, and then we have an external purpose statement. So my internal purpose statement is the one I just said to you that was the eulogy. It's a bit long, right? It's a bit long. But the external one is much shorter. The internal one is kind of feels, should feel a bit scary. It should feel a bit like, ooh, that's a big claim. You know what I mean? So mine, just to tell you mine is Father of Dragons. That's what mine is.
Right.
The people I work with are all dragons. Right? And people go, wow, you know, what is that? And it's like, it feels egoic for me to say it. I feel a bit embarrassed, and that's why I have to say it. Because there's some just massive being inside of you that needs to breathe fire on all the crap that you want out of the world and just so you can spread your wings and stop fitting in and shaving bits of yourself off so you can squeeze in, but instead spread your wings and belong. I am the Father of Dragons. That's enormous. That's an internal and an external. Right? So when you've got that internal one, that's the stuff that inside of the executive team that we're all like, yeah. But the external one is the one that goes out into the world and they get it.
By the way, I'm waiting for you to just now show your dragon eggs, just because that would just kill it. Just bring out those dragon eggs. And
I haven't got permission from my wife.
Right, there you go. By the way, two things I wanted to add to this conversation. One is Stephen works for a company called Assurance, and they've been consistently one of the top places to work in Chicago. And much of the marketing has been around the notion that happy employees equal happy customers. So there's you know, he's got employee alignment at least with this notion. But I wanted to sort of some great stories and some amazing analogies. I wanted to make sure that anybody else, whether Dave or Eric, you had questions for Dov as it pertains to this, and then I come back to one other thought.
This is Eric. Just a quick question. Do you think in this wonderful world of so many different industries and segments that every company can find this type of a purpose?
I do, without doubt. I have never. So let me be clear. As with all things, I do if you want to. If you say you want to because it's the cool, trendy thing to do, but you don't really want to answer the hard questions, and you don't really want to go there, then no. You know, and Drew and I had a conversation about this last week, and he said, has it ever failed? And the answer is yes, it has. Because the CEO of the company, it was a family business, the CEO of the company, the founder was his dad. His dad was still very much pulling the strings. The CEO really wanted us to come in, really wanted to do the work, was committed to it. But at every possible turn, his dad took a leak on it. So, you know, we could never get to the truth of what it was. So can we get there? With anybody. It doesn't matter to me what you are, what kind of a company you are. Absolutely. But you gotta want to get there. It can't just be the new, cool, trendy thing to do because somebody read Simon Sinek's book.
You know what's so interesting from a marketing standpoint, if we also look at our role as CMOs, is your job is to differentiate and distinguish, ideally position your company as a unique entity. It's easier to do that via a purpose, which is real, than it is through any kind of features and functionality. Right? And so it's actually, I mean, it can be an ordeal to get there, but in my opinion, it's a much direct likelihood of finding a purpose that is unique to your organization and therefore unique to the world and unique in the marketplace is much greater than some sort of feature function kind of differentiation.
Well, as I said, in the world that we live in today, so much is commoditized. You know, if you're in insurance, you're in a commoditized business. If you don't have a unique position, a point of differentiation that is an emotional content, you're not going to stand out. It's just not going to happen. And it's more commoditized and more global than it's ever been. And so, I mean, I'm in the leadership world. I don't have any competition. There is no competition for me. None. In fact, some of my greatest quote-unquote competitors I now collaborate with because I'm committed to serve. That's it. Because even if I've been on stage with other people who are speaking about purpose and we're not in the same field, because my position is, my way of coming at it is unique, and it's an emotional concept. You guys are in marketing, you understand that. The driving force of human beings is not rationale, it's not logic, it's emotion. So what is the deepest connection to emotion? It is purpose. This is why I get up in the morning. This is the meaning for me. Oh, and you do that? I love you. I want to be with you. I want to work with you. I want to spend my money with you.
I'm wondering, Dave, if you have a question before we wrap up.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a follow-up to Kevin's. And our company right now, Naylor, is in the process of going through brand purpose work. And you know, we're early on, let's say maybe 15 to 20% along the way. What I'm concerned about is ending up at some place that's really aspirational, and then there's a gap between where we are and where our, you know, the bulk of our employees are, and what that, you know, what that more than just activation, it feels a little daunting in terms of the amount of, you know, I think training, but, you know, just getting people to live and breathe in their roles and tie into that brand purpose. I get it from an emotional perspective. I want to end up there. I want everyone to wake up and be totally jazzed about what we're doing. And I don't know yet, because we're not at the end of the process, but I'm just a little nervous of what that work is going to look like when we get to the end of our work 3 months from now. I feel like if I had to guess, a 12 to 24 month journey beyond that to really get every one of our 500 employees living, breathing, acting this out.
Right. And so I think you gave the clue to yourself there, Dave, and I think it's one of the things that we confront all the time, and that is there is no there. You're looking at this being a 90-day process. It's not. This is the lifeblood of your company. So this is never there. So this is always ongoing. It's always deepening, and we're always reinvigorating it. We're always bringing it in. So it has to be. It's got to be part of it. You don't go, oh yeah, we've dealt with marketing. We marketed from 1995 to 2005. We're done now. Of course you know. It's an ongoing thing. So why the hell wouldn't purpose be that? It's integrating every single day, bringing it in. And one of the things around that is that we are feeding it into every conversation, every marketing, every sales. It's got to be in every conversation. And it's not. And what people want to do is they want to put it like whipping cream on top. It's not. It's foundational. It's way below the foundation, and it comes up through the foundation, and it grows into the company. It is not a done. It's not a 90 days and we're done. So people say to me, how long does it take to do this work? We come in and do the work with you in 2 days. That's what we do. It's mind-blowing how fast we can do it, but it's powerful. However, the integration of it, you are going to be doing that with every new employee who comes in, and you're going to set up the groups, and you're going to do the things we just talked about, and you're going to assign people to be the corporate cultural concierge of it, and they're going to do that, and they're going to keep it in the flow, because you can't afford this to be something you just spent 200 grand on to get to in a couple of months, and now, oh yeah, now it goes in all your marketing, and nobody gives a crap. So it's not a done and dusted, and it's one of the traps I see all the time is that people want to say, oh, we're done now. No, you're not. You're not done. And the analogy I give all the time is I've been a fitness freak for 40 years. You know what happens if I stop going to the gym? It goes downhill. I can't not go. I have to go. But you've been working out for 40 years, Dov. Won't it just stay? No. It will go away. So it's the same with purpose. It will wear thin if you don't keep reinvigorating. You got to keep breathing into it. You got to keep adding the fuel to it every single day.
What a great place for us to wrap up the show. I've loved this conversation. I thank Stephen and Kevin and Dave and Eric for joining and asking your questions, and of course Dov for being on the show. I have some final word because it's my show, but I not many. And what I loved about the last part of this is not a coat of paint. This is the opposite of that. It will, as it comes up from the inside, you're essentially kind of remaking the organization from the ground up when you do this right. And it becomes more real. And everything that you're doing in marketing and driving in marketing is making it more real, because the purpose becomes infused in hiring. It becomes infused in your employee communications. It becomes infused in your sales process. It becomes infused in, and even in your testimonials and how your customers speak about you. And then gradually it becomes marketing and the house is a lot shinier, but it really is very much not and I love that. It is not an end state. It is a permanent commitment to aspiring to be something profound. And that's amazing to do it. And, one of the things that's great about being an entrepreneur is that you don't have to convince an organization to go along with it. You can do that. But I think what's great about being a CMO is that, and this is the kind of transformation that I'm seeing CMOs being able to do, is that through this, it kind of feels like marketing, but it's not. It's a lot more. They're sort of in some ways, they're sort of bringing purpose into the organization. And then in the process, they're transforming it. And suddenly, CEO looks at you like, you just changed our whole approach to business, to doing business. And that's, I think, what is so exciting about the role of being a CMO right now. Last word, Dov, anything else that you would like to say, or where people can find you out there?
Well, I'll tell you where you can find me first. You can find me and all of our stuff. You can simply go to dovbaron.com, dovbaron.com. Which will redirect you to fullmontyleadership.com, which is our main corporate site. You can find me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, Facebook, all those kinds of places that marketers would look. I write for 12 or 14 different outlets, and I've got a bunch of books that you can find through my website or through Amazon or wherever it is. And there's a YouTube channel with about 700 videos on it. There's a great blog on there as well on my thing. But the bottom line is this. I want to encourage you. I am going to finish off by saying one thing, but I want to just encourage you. Here's the thing. I know that if you're listening to Drew's show, that you probably listen on a regular basis because this is your niche. This is what's important to you. And it's very easy for us to hoard. Not consciously, but unconsciously. And not because we're trying to hoard, but, especially in a competitive marketing world, we often hoard. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to go the opposite. Remember I said to you, I don't have any competition? I want you to go the opposite. I'm going to challenge you to go onto iTunes or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Go rate, review, subscribe, and share Drew's show. Share this Renegade show with other marketers, with other people. Get it out there. Be generous, because there is no competition. It's an illusion. Be generous with it. Share this. The guy takes the time to pre-chat. I know, because I do the same for my show. We find out who's the best guest. We find out where they fit. We put time and energy, as well as the recording and all that, to do it. I wanted you to get out there and share this show with other people, because it is in your generosity that you get to recognize your abundance, and you get to recognize that you are unique. And so what I want you to do is, my challenge to you is this, my practicality is to ask you, number one, what is the most difficult question you won't ask yourself, or you never ask yourself out loud? Just ask it in a journal. Write it out by hand. Works with different parts of your brain. Write it out by hand. And you start with the question, what is the question I'm afraid to ask? Write that down. And then answer it and keep answering it. You might get 50 questions, but keep answering it and then answer those questions. It will give you a deeper connection to your own purpose. That's number one. And what I want to finish with is this. Please Stay curious, my friends. Stay curious. Curiosity is the foundation of everything that is good in your life. And it is the thing that we are all pulled away from. And as marketers, it's so easy to go the other way, but that is the power. Staying curious. It connects you to your fire.
All right. By the way, I'm going to use some of that in as a commercial for the show. Love that.
You totally have my permission.
Thank you, Dov. And to all the listeners, I'm so grateful that you spent this time with us. And until next time, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.